And I gotta adjust my camera, of course, right in the middle. My wife doesn't like to see herself when she comes in. So hi, yeah, and we're already live, and I'm already talking, like that. But hey, everyone, I have Ghost Wolf out of the chat, but he's also not just Ghost Wolf. He's a really good friend of mine, and we went out squatching, and we plan on doing some more squatching, and we had some interesting things happen, and then he also has a very very interesting story, and we'll get into that. But I'm not gonna be like real formal, like a interview or anything like that. We're just gonna chat. We're gonna be in the chat zone tonight, just chatting. So welcome, Chris. How are you, man?
Good, Alan. How you doing?
I am doing great. And I see Amanda's in chat, and Connie and Ivy. Everybody's showing up. I didn't give much of a heads up tonight on people, so
I'm not
hopefully,
seeing it up here yet for some reason.
huh?
I'm not seeing our.
Oh, you're not seeing
Oh,
the chat?
here okay. Hang on. It just popped up. I was refreshing and here we go. Now I'm seeing it. Got it.
Yeah, every once in a while I have to check the CPU usage to make sure that everything is like copacetic. But yeah, so like I'll do like a little bit of history here so that everybody, bring everybody up to speed on us. Hey,
Oh
Ed
yeah.
and Shelly and Amanda and Rob and Ivy and Connie and it's Amanda again. Hi everyone. Um, what were we doing? Like we were talking. Was it through Jeff, or was it like how did we do that? All I know is I remember you showed up at my house and picked me up, and then we went up, and we were. But how did we get hooked up before that? That part I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, I think it was more so that um, in chat when you were on that other inferior show that
Right.
we were pretty active in chat, and then we planned the Memorial Day trip, and Jeffrey, asked me to go on that, and then you and I talked on the phone, just going over logistics and whatnot. And I think the first time we talked on the phone, I want to say we talked for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
It was,
Easy.
yeah, it was like really weird because I usually don't, I'm not one to make quick friends a lot of times, but it's like we kind of hit it off, and um, it was pretty funny because I picked Alan up. We drove a couple hours to the spot, and when we first got there, we got to the spot. We were kind of enthusiastic, and we jumped out and we walked down this trail, and it was just like dead silent. There was nobody around at all, and we walked down this trail. It's real thick, the just the underbrush and the woods and whatnot, and I'm very kind of sensitive. I always follow my gut type of thing, and Alan and I walked down this road, a few hundred yards, and all of a sudden we got to this bend, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to seem like a chicken or something. Something just like stopped me dead in my tracks right before we did this right turn. And the funny thing was, I looked up at Alan, and he had kind of a funny look on his face, and I said, maybe we ought to go back and get our guns out before we go any further. He's like, yeah, I get a weird feeling too. And so we were walking back, and we were walking back up near the truck to get our stuff, and I heard mumbling, and so it was, I'm not sure if this was Bigfoot related or just, different related, but I asked Alan, I says, hey, do you hear anything? He goes, yeah, it sounds like someone's mumbling. And then I didn't say to him what I thought it was, but I thought to me it sounded like an older woman, female. And Alan looks at me and says, does it sound female to you? And I says, yeah, it actually does. And so it was really cool. We were having a really good time, and there was like a, kind of a good vibe going. And then Jeffrey showed up with his with his sidekick, you know, some other person that came with him. and it just kind of killed the whole vibe of the trip for me. But it was fun getting out and hiking around and checking things out. And so I'm looking forward to another trip with just he and I, or some some fresh blood.
Yeah, you know what? I remember that really good. Um, I all there was also some like big turds in the road. Remember that?
I still have the pictures of your cowboy boot, like your foot next to it, and I took pictures. I still have the picture.
Man, I mean,
And
it was like there were big piles. That's the first time I ever saw piles like that before.
the
Anywhere near
pile,
there.
yeah, the yeah, the piles were giant, and then there was a couple spots that we saw that something large had curled up and laid down. I don't know. It could have been a bear. Remember that tall grass? It was just beyond where our trucks kind of were behind us, and then we found a couple of those areas like that. That was kind of strange to me.
That right where those in where the grass was, where we found that. That's actually where this last time that I went with Jeffrey and the camera crew, um, something was throwing things at our tent, and that's where they were. They were at that spot again.
Hmm.
I mean, they were actually hiding right there, laying down in the grass and throwing stuff at us from right there.
Yeah, as much as I couldn't stand Jeff, and I hadn't talked to you since our falling out that Jeffrey and I had.
Hmm.
I even posted on there a positive comment. I said, I don't know if you looked at it or remembered, Alan, but I said, when he was still allowing comments on his YouTube videos, I said, well, if Alan says it happened, I believe him, and the terrain there is thick enough that would be easy for something to do something and get away. It's pretty thick, hard to maneuver terrain. And when we got there, Alan had been there before, obviously, several times, and he was pointing out, you talk about X structures and trees pulled down into shapes or structures. I think Alan said, it looks like a tornado went through here, and it really does. There's not much of anything standing in a regular direction, and it was kind of, it wasn't typical for what I would say is, typical blowdowns or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Oh no, it's not. What's really weird about that place, you're it's we're going down into like a hidden valley, like, you know what I mean? Like we're driving through the foothills, and it's not really woods or mountains, it's farmhouses and stuff like that, and scrub oaks and things like that. And then you go up this ridge and then down into a really thick forest with, and it looks destroyed. I mean, there's uh complete destruction, trees knocked down everywhere, all different directions too, not just all in one direction or anything like that. And then there's all the ones that they look like they place, and it's not little bitty branches or nothing. We're talking about full on huge big trees, that are placed like that. It's a unique place. I know that for you know for bigfooting.
Yeah, and the other strange thing, and it's really funny because um, since we've been, I've heard this commented by other people, like on Sasquatch Chronicles and whatnot. And it was the only way I can describe it is, how when you put your finger in your mouth and make that kind of pop sound, on your cheek, but it sounded like that, but it was like super loud. It echoed, and it was like twice. And I'm like, I've heard deer make funny noise and stuff like that, and it just echoed, and it happened twice. And it was during the day, the second day, when I'd walked not down the hill, kind of the way you and I walked down, but the opposite direction, like the way we came in. I walked up that way, and I heard like really loud, one on one side of the road and one on the other side of the road. And it's really strange. And since then, I've heard a lot of people talk about that noise.
Hmm. The mumbling, like when you pointed, I didn't know if you could hear, if you heard that or not. You know, when we took like a little walk and I was getting, actually, I didn't feel anything at first. You know that? I mean, I was just going along, and we were talking along, and all of a sudden, I felt it, like watching me or something, and I mean, it stopped me in my tracks, and that's when you were saying, "Hey, shouldn't we get the gun?" You know, I mean, that stopped me, and on the way back is when I started hearing the female. And I've heard the pops and the whistles in there so many times, and the samurai or whatever you want to call it, the chatter, chimp noise, you know. But only that one, almost it sounded. That's the first time I ever heard a female one
Well, I
in
had
there.
actually seen something too just before dark, and I don't know if you remember, but we're sitting there talking, and I saw something in my eyes that looked just big and dark, is all I could say. Like, for all intents and purposes, I'm not going to lie and say that I saw got a good look at a shape or anything, but it was large, like as if a deer jumped through my field of vision or something. And I looked, I don't know if you were standing there or not, but I looked and I said, "Hey, I just saw something go through there." And of course, there was, "Oh no, you couldn't have seen anything, you would have heard it." And I'm like,
No,
"Well,
not necessarily.
yeah." And I'm like,
Um,
"Maybe not these things." And I didn't say anything. And that was right as it was getting dark. And the weird thing about being up there is it's not like, being in a campground, or, I've done a lot of backpacking and stuff too throughout the years in the Sierras. And when it gets dark, the thing that was going through my mind is I felt really confident during the daytime, maybe stupidly so, but I was pretty confident during the day.
uh-huh.
And as soon as it started getting dark and my vision started becoming impaired, I thought, wow, we are at a total disadvantage now. Now it's like their time where, one could have walked up behind any one of us and grabbed us and yanked us into the bushes, and no one would know what happened to you. I mean, it's that black dark, and it's really a funny feeling when you've got that, you feel that you're at that disadvantage, when you're out there. Sure, you can have a little flashlight or something, but that, that only goes so far when it's just black out there.
See, it comes with that feeling though. You know what I mean? Like uh, it's black and you can't see very far, but only it has that real palpable feel. You know what I mean? That you're not alone, and whatever it is pretty big. I mean, you just get that feeling. In fact, I wanted you to talk about that a little bit because that was what one of the things we talked about as we walked down the road. Like we were like feeling each other out, kind of like. But really, what we
Yeah.
were doing was kind of feeling out the area, and then sharing what we were feeling. You know what I mean?
But
And
yeah, you were right. It was really thick when we first got there, and I would say even a couple hours later, even before uh, the wannabe and a sidekick got there, um, it kind of lightened up for me a little bit, where I would have just blown right past that corner, and I think we did actually. We went up to the truck for a while, and uh, and then turned around and went back through there. So it's really, I mean, I always follow my instincts because I'm very sensitive to situations around me, and I don't want to get hippy dippy and say, energies or whatever, but just because of my, I have a long, long, long history of paranormal, experience, and so I know that feeling. It's like I tell my friends, just because it makes sense. I say it's like my spider sense is tingling. Like I can tell when something's, kind of nearby, and that's the way I felt the first, you know,
that's
hour or so we were there, and then it kind of changed.
That's what I tell everybody that too. Like the spider senses. That's my little word for it. But yeah, like but only you were telling me some things, about how you got how I don't. Well, I can't remember if it was like if how you got sensitive like that or. But only you were
Well,
telling me about how you've had all these paranormal experiences and stuff like that, and they're deep, you know, like
yeah, it's been like a 50-year deal with me, since I've been a few years old, and I still not in my home, and I'll get into that later. While this the house I'm in now, there's nothing because I protected it as such when I moved in. Once I learned how to do all, to access the power that we all have. But prior to that, every house I lived in was, in fact, my first house. I'm actually seriously, sincerely thinking of writing a book. Was basically, Amityville horror, type stuff. And over time, I mean, my wife now, when she, prior to meeting me, she had no uh, paranormal, real experiences to speak of. And soon as we got together, and she started, even before we were living together, when she was just hanging out at the house, she started having experiences. And my son had experiences. And so it's just one of these things that's kind of, I don't know, followed me around or whatever. And up until, say, maybe 10 years ago, um, I kind of felt like a victim to all this. And finally, I figured out I've always been a believer. I've always been a Bible reader and a believer. And then one day it dawned on me, that I couldn't get no one really knows or cares to try and help people that are having these issues. And so I started reading up on it, so to speak, and studying. And I found out that we all have that ability to protect ourselves and help others and protect others. And once I learned what these secrets are, it kind of changed everything for me. It was like, okay, these things may still be around, but I'm not on the defensive now. I'm on the offensive. And
Right.
and I've actually been lucky enough to help a few people, maybe half a dozen people help themselves. And so I still, to this day, like I said, not here, but as Ed said, Ed remembers me talking about it over in the other chat, where for whatever reason my work is just littered with stuff like that. And since then, there's even been, I mean, even recently, as recently as last week, one of the guys that works nights said he was in the copy machine room, and he felt like someone was watching him. So he turned, and he said there was a black shadow person standing there that was like 7 feet tall.
Oh, great.
And yeah, and this guy's a big dude too. He looks like a lumberjack.
Wow.
And he's a big dude with a red beard. He's really funny. He looks just like the Dinty Moore guy on the stew can. That's what this guy looks like.
Well, you
And
just gave me a great mental picture, because I love that stuff. I mean, I
right,
take
so
it
you know who I'm
camping with
talking about,
me.
the dude with the little stocking hat. Yeah, that dude.
Yeah.
And, and he, I said, "What'd you do?" And he goes, "Oh, I just got the heck out of there." And it was just really funny seeing that big dude say that. And there's one of our female employees got hit in the back of the head. I laughed because she didn't get hurt, but she got hit in the back of the head with like a 12-inch fan. Um, there's always I work for a bakery, and so we have these rolling racks that have bread pans on them and stuff. And several times people have said that they've seen them moving around by themselves. And we have, this is super creepy, we have these things called proof boxes, and that's where our bread it's a damp environment. It's like, say, as big as say half of a house, and we've got 15 of them. And but they fog them because they want humidity, right? So they're fogged, so you walk in there, you can't see anything. Well, box 6, for whatever reason, I have never seen anything in box 6, but I've got people that won't set foot in box 6 because they said there's a creepy little girl that hangs out in the corner of box number 6. So there's all kinds of weird stuff at that work for whatever reason. But
Yeah, I think when we were walking down that road, or no, it was when we were riding up there, you were telling me some of the stuff about that, about some of the things that go on in there. And I think a lot of times those things, at least the ones that you can't see, or they don't really bother people that they know, that they sense or know can mess with them. You know what I mean? So you probably won't see a lot of stuff because you can deal with them and they know it. You know what I mean? Even though
Yeah, and there's
some of them
and then,
might challenge you, but only it's not going to be like the other people where they could scare the crap out of them, make them run. You know?
yeah, it's funny because I there's very few things I'll say definitely because this is such a weird subject, and I'm don't claim to know it all, but all I can say is based on my experiences, I've seen these things react when I look at them, when they know I can see them. And they'll retreat and they know, I think because they know who I am, they know what I'm about, they know I'm not afraid of them. So I look at them and they'll um, like flinch back, so to speak, and immediately retreat.
Wow.
And I it was funny because there was one incident in my old house, the house I had before I moved up to where I'm at now, and it was broad daylight, and I was in my kitchen. We had like a rectangular shaped, kind of a what they call a galley style, rectangular kitchen.
Yeah.
It's the middle of the day on a weekend, so it's not creepy, it's not dark, it's not scary. There's no alcohol, no drugs, and all. Just an average Saturday. And I was getting something out of my pantry, and at the end of my kitchen, I see something standing there, and I look over, and it's not. It's maybe 4 to 5 foot tall. It looks like if you took a Shar-Pei dog and a gargoyle and combined the two, had glowing red eyes, and it's just standing there in my kitchen.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I looked, and I'm not embarrassed to say, for about 2 seconds, it really scared me because, this is, kind of new territory for me at that point. And I looked over, and after about 2 seconds, my fear turned into anger, and I said, no, not in my house. And I said, and I can't, to be honest with you, my heart was beating. It was that feeling you get like when you're getting ready to get in a fight. And I rushed toward it, kind of rebuking it, and saying, in the name of Jesus, you can't, get out of here. Well, this thing recoiled and then went around the corner, and I didn't hesitate. I charged around the corner into our living room, and it was gone.
Whoa.
But I called my wife over, and I said, "What do you smell?" And it smelled just like you see in these dopey movies. It smelled like sulfur and like a rotten egg smell, really strong. And then it was gone. And then but that was like the weirdest thing, and that was the first time that one of these things that I saw actually like recoiled and ran. So from me, and so since then it's happened 3 or 4 times. So the only thing I can think of is I just think they know kind of what I'm about, and that I'm not afraid and I'm not going to back down. And one of them will have to kill me if they want me to stop, or they can try, but I'm they can't because of what's inside of me and what I'm about. And
Yeah.
I strongly believe that what does it say in the Bible? And I'm not great at quoting the Bible, but it says what's inside lives inside you is stronger than the world around you, or something.
Yeah.
And
He that is in you is greater than he that is in the world.
right,
And the he part can mean anything. And it could be 20
right,
feet tall even. Yeah.
yeah. And so I mean, even at work, there was something. Probably the worst thing I've seen, since we're on the subject of work, is I was talking to a guy. Well, two things. I'll tell you both of them. These are the two weirdest ones. The first one was I was talking to a guy, just normal talking to him. About 10 feet behind him, there was all these, and Pam was a baker, so she'll know what I'm talking about. There was all these rolling bakery racks. And there was probably 50 of them that were stored in this section, and they're dark in color. And I noticed something caught my eye that was just bright white, like pure white, like paper white. Well, I looked over, and I know this is going to be kind of hard for me to explain, but those body suits that people can put on their bodies and you can't see their face, kind of like the Blue Man Group look. That latex
Yeah.
suit, so it kind of covers all your features, right?
Yeah, like a ninja kind of
Yeah,
look.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It looked like that, but it had no arms, and it was kind of like almost like a chess piece shape, if that makes any sense, like the bishop. The
Right.
kind of pointy head. I know that's a weird way to describe the shape, but it
Almost
was
sounds
that, and it was
almost.
bright white. But here's the creepy part. Well, there's two creepy parts. The creepy part is it was covered in hair.
Whoa.
Okay, yeah, and
Okay.
so I looked at this thing. It jumped and contorted and recoiled. And when it went away, it didn't just disappear. It snaked down into the ground like in an S shape. Like picture if a snake went vertically into the ground. If you can,
Like a
I'm
worm, like
doing
a
I'm doing
worm
it with my
does,
hands as if you guys can see me right now.
but like a worm, like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Whoa.
I'm like, what the heck? And I mean, I've never seen anything like that. It was just weird. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, what you just did, Alan. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
and
little bit of a delay, but only yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. Woo.
yeah, you're delayed on my screen, so yeah. But what you did, I did that.
It's delayed on mine too. Uh, that's what even the chat is. Like I was explaining earlier, a little what yesterday when we were talking about it. The, we'll be talking about something, and then uh, they'll start commenting on things that we said, but it'll be 2 minutes or a minute and a half after we already talked about it. So sometimes the chat can get confusing when you're actually
Okay.
on, like when we're doing this. So,
Mhm.
but I mean, that wasn't even 2 minutes, so that was like 20 seconds or something like that,
Yeah.
really.
And then the other weird thing that I saw is you know how when you're trying to catch up to someone, they're walking in front of you, so you're kind of get trying to get their attention. So there was one of the foremen. I was trying to get his attention. One of the guys that works for me, and he was walking along, and he passed this support beam for the building, right? Like a big, just picture a 2 foot by 2 foot cement pillar going from floor to ceiling. And it's, our bakery is lit pretty well. And he passed this pillar, and it was as if he scared an animal. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm
Hmm.
going to tell you anyway. He passed this pillar, and at about the 8 foot level, I saw something move, and it was big, and it literally had the outline of a black, like panther,
Whoa.
or cat or dog, like a big animal, like a Rottweiler or a dog. And this thing ran up the pole through the ceiling of the place. I mean, I watched it for 3 full seconds, like, 1001, 1002, 1003. It's like, that long. And I watched this thing just blow out. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing?
Man, it sounds
Now,
like Skinwalker Ranch. You know,
yeah. And I mean, there'll be times where I'm walking around talking with someone, I'll look up and I'll see something above, like gray. And one thing that I've seen frequently is this like dark gray, like just blob, for lack of a better term.
yeah. Let me ask you a question because I've seen those too. Did it look like TV fuzz? Like in the old days when you turned it on a channel and black and white TV, and you turned it on a channel and there's no station. You know what I mean? And it would be like gray and everything would be going shh, kind of like. Did it look like that, or was it just like a little cloud?
No, it was big, and it looked like like you said, it looked like, yeah, like yeah, it looked cloud-like, but it had movement, if that makes sense. And it was
Uh-huh.
funny because I was walking around with this girl that works with me, Amy, and we're walking around, and something caught my eye over her head. And I always have to be on the lookout because we do, when you're making food, you look for, obviously you don't want a bird or some other creature or animal in the, we're very careful about doors being open, and you have to be real careful about critters, getting
Oh
in, real
yeah.
critters. And uh and um I looked up, and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing." And then about 2 weeks later, we were talking about repairing this one area, and I happened to look up, and there this thing is again, kind of on a mezzanine over these pipes. And there was a guy walking up there like to do some work, and I almost like wanted to stop him, you know. And
Oh,
but before he got, when he was about halfway up the ladder to this mezzanine, it went away. You know, if it would have still been there, at the risk of looking like an idiot, I would have like ran over and stopped him from going up. Oh, and there's another funny thing too. So one of the crew leads and myself were in the conference room, and we had one of those, I don't know what you call them, they're like a speaker phone. They look kind of like a UFO, and you put it in the middle of a table, and
oh yeah. Okay.
everybody, yeah, I'm sure you used them, Al, when you were at the casino, you know, the big conference.
Intercom type thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So me and this guy are sitting in there, and all of a sudden, out of this thing, we hear like, you know, this weird growl. And he looks at me and I look at him, and we weren't talking it. We were both, you know, head down working. And I said, wait a minute, because I just saw something. I go, wait a minute, that thing's sometimes not hooked up. So I got up, I grabbed the cord, and I started walking, and the cord was not plugged in.
Oh wow.
And I showed the guy, because I go, look, you're not going to believe me. And I held it up and showed him that the cord was not plugged in. And he looked at me and he goes, so he looked really scared, this guy.
Yeah.
And I said, he goes, well, what was that? And I didn't want to freak him out. And so I said, I don't know. You know, hopefully it was just a weird, you know, freak thing. But I kind of knew what it, you know, what I thought it was, but I didn't want to say, you know.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to like freak them out real bad because
No,
they're
no.
already
And
freaked
I think I
out.
remember telling you guys, and Ed, and you guys might have remembered this story if I told before, but I actually had two women come into my office, you know, crying, saying they wouldn't go into a certain room because a bunch of them had gotten grabbed and scared out of it. And so I had to move the stuff they used to have to go in this room. They made me like move it outside because they started crying, and they said they would quit if I forced them to go back in this room. And one of the ladies, a Hispanic lady, she started wearing this giant cross to work around her neck. She goes, I ain't going near that place. I'll quit, you know, if you make me go there.
Man,
And so,
do you know what the building was before, or like anything about the history of the land around there?
no, as a matter of fact, the building, I don't think is that old. I mentioned it to Pam and Chad. I'm guessing now it's about, it can't be older than 20 years maybe. In fact, I was talking to the building owner yesterday. He came over and talked to me about some repairs because we don't own the building. We're renters at this building. So I'm not sure, but just by the architecture and the features that are built into the building, it can't be more than 20 years old.
Wow.
But it's just a bizarre, just a weird, you know, just a weird place.
Like in the man, I would say late 70s. I lived in Paso Robles for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and there's a fire extinguisher factory back there. You know, like as I guess it's like more east of Paso Robles, but you know they were telling me that the place has a lot of history. You know, like Spanish and you know the missions and stuff like that. And I guess that was like the main highway that went up and down California for Mexico and all that back in the
Yeah,
day. You know, way back in the day. So I
there's
mean,
supposed
it
to
could
be.
be anything really.
I've heard of a couple haunted places in town, but I've never. Um, One of them's a bar. I don't go to bars at all anymore, really. So there's supposed to be one of the bars in town, and then the Paso Robles Inn is supposed to be,
Yeah.
you know, haunted. But um, yeah, it's a weird place. And you know, speaking of work, so this is a story that that's kind of relevant because this happened no less than, well, just before Christmas, so a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Just a few
And
weeks ago.
yeah, a couple weeks ago. So this one's relatively new. So I got this one guy that works for me. He's a younger man, and he's always been a really top performer. And lately, his performance has just really gone down. Like he went from like really solid guy to, like we have attendance points, like you know how many times you call in after you use up all your time, and I think between October and December the dude got like five, you know, 5 attendance, like just stopped showing up, and he started acting really funny. So one day he comes into my office and he sits down and he doesn't look right. So I'm already kind of I'm looking at him and I'm not seeing like he's not looking too bueno to me, right?
Yeah.
So he starts talking to me, and on his Christmas break he was going to go to the Philippines because he met this girl in the Philippines, um, became his girlfriend. He was there for like a month. She got pregnant. And she had had a baby that he was going to go see. He hadn't seen her. So he comes in my office and he says, "Hey, I know you know about the occult and stuff, and I've never talked to this guy about it. So already I'm like, yeah, a little bit, you know." And he says, "Well, I'm really kind of anxious. I haven't been sleeping." And I'm like, "Okay, what's wrong?" And he's like, "Well, in the Philippines, there's a satanic cult that's going around kidnapping children and sacrificing them." So he says, "I'm really worried." So I go, "Well, what are you doing?" And he says, "Well, see this?" And he pulls this big cross out that he's wearing, and he goes, "I put this on my Bible every night in their picture." And I said, "Well, that's okay, but you should probably say a prayer for him too, whatever." He's like, "Yeah, the demons are starting to affect me." And I said, um, "Well, how do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, that's what's going on here with you and me." And
Whoa.
yeah, and I go, "What are you talking about?" And he's motioning like with his hand, like me and him, me and him. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, you know how we always used to get along really well, and lately we've been kind of going at it, and I think that's because of the demons. They're doing it."
Like he's possessed or something?
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking, okay, I've had cases before where people have called me and asked me for help, and after talking for 10 minutes, I can tell that unfortunately they don't need my help, but they might have a little bit of a mental issue going on, and that's what's going on with them. So I kind of think that this is what's going on, and so I said, "Well, do you see the demons right now?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, when do you see them?" He goes, "Well, when I go home, I turn on all the lights, and if I look out my window, they're everywhere. And they tell me stuff."
Oh boy.
Yeah. So then he says, here's the part where it gets creepy. So he says a few more things, and here's the part that gets, at least for me, he gets kind of creepy. He says to me, "It's kind of weird the way they call you out by name." Well, I've never told him the stories I'm telling you guys, and there's been a couple times when I have been called by name, right?
Right.
But I haven't shared with many people. So I looked at him, and all of a sudden my red light is now going off, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I asked him, "Sean, why, why would you say that? How would you know that? Why would you say that?" And you know what he said? He said, "Because they told me."
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
the only way he would know too. That's kind of weird. Wow.
yeah, so he goes on his trip, he comes back, and he's in the locker room changing, and I happen to walk by where the schedule is, and I said, "Hey, Sean, how was your vacation?" And he literally just kind of looks at me and growls, and I'm not going to say that his eyes were black like a black-eyed kid, but his pupils were black. And I'm like, okay, I know there's certain drugs or things that can make someone's pupils be black, but I don't know if this dude's on drugs, but, you know, uh, it's just kind of weird. And a couple other things weird happened at work. Um, well, weird in as much so my boss was in my office the other day, and he looks at my nameplate. He goes, "Oh, look what someone defaced your nameplate." And I looked, and someone had taken a pen and like put an X on it. I didn't think anything of it, so I didn't say much, and I kind of wiped it off because it kind of wiped right off, right?
Hmm.
So a couple days ago, I walked by my nameplate, and the HR guy goes, "Hey, look at your nameplate." And someone had taken a knife and like slashed up my nameplate to the point where I just chucked it. I just threw it away. And
What?
I'm thinking to myself, you know, I, hopefully, I don't know who would do this. It's not much of a, you know, a funny joke. Yeah, I know. So go figure. So I don't know if this guy is just, you know, crazy. If he does have something taking, you know, taking him over, or a little bit of both. I don't know, but I now keep my distance, and you know, I just keep my eye on this kid now, you know, more so. And you know,
Oh,
I'm always aware of my surroundings, but I'm certainly more aware now, you know, that that happened. And
dang,
everybody
man.
at work kind of freaked out over it. And I purposely just said nothing about it and did nothing about it because, you know, sometimes if you do that, sooner or later you'll find out who it is, you know.
Yeah, well, it was probably him. I mean, he would be the most likely. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
maybe buddies told them to.
Do you guys have lockers over there?
Yes.
Try praying over his locker and see what happens. You know what I mean? Like maybe I shouldn't talk about it on the air like that, but because people don't, a lot of people don't understand what I'm talking about, but I know you do.
Oh yeah, I know what you're saying.
And see if there's any reaction or anything, like if he can't get into his locker,
Hmm.
and then for sure something's going on.
Right.
You know, man, that's a trip, man.
Yeah, so that's just kind of a weird sidebar to my world, you know. It's just, you know.
Yeah. Well, there was some other ones you told me about it, like the same thing that happens to me, like when me and Jeffrey would go to like haunted houses, or they would say they would call us and say there's demon possessed houses, stuff like that, and we would go out there, and then actually it's happened to me even when I didn't do that, but it seemed like it started after that. It was the first time I ever, well, not the first time. I had some way back in the 80s, but nothing really until, me and Jeff went out to these places, and then people would come straight up attacking me. I mean, like straight up accusing me of, all kinds of stuff, and then asking me what my credentials are and what church do I belong to and all kinds of stuff. I was telling you, or, you were telling me that we had, when we were doing that show and talking about it, you had experiences like that, where people come running up on you. And that
Oh
only
yeah,
happens whenever you have the spirit in you.
yeah. And you and the thing is when you're, you know, anytime you're dealing with the stuff either yourself or trying to help someone, you always have to kind of be careful because you know, it's kind of like when you put yourself, it's almost like I look at standing in front of a bullet for somebody, right? You
Right.
know, and you got to be properly protected. If you have a Kevlar vest on, you don't get hurt by the bullet, so to speak. You know what I mean? It just that you. I think if you go in half cocked and unprepared, then you're really asking for serious trouble. You have to be really sure that you're doing things under the right circumstances with the right protection for the right reasons. Otherwise, you're in huge at a huge risk.
Yeah,
You know.
and whatever we're talking about, it's making the YouTube skip. I mean, I got like supposedly strong live stream. The all the stuff looks green. Everything's going good, and everything's like now my router's gonna start messing with me. Can you believe that?
Yeah. So you know, I have an odd effect on electronics myself. My wife makes fun of me. Sometimes we go walking at night, and I walk under a street light, and it'll turn off, and she just looks at me and cracks up. Or you know, we at our other house, not so much here, but uh, you know, electrical anomalies, or you know, kind of go with the territory. You know, sometimes.
Yeah, it happens to
Uh,
me. I mean, I don't wear a watch because of it. Like,
right.
I have a whole bunch of watches though. You know what I mean? Like if anybody wants one, maybe they can make it work. But you know, like somebody will give me a watch or I'll buy a watch and you know, it lasts like a month and then it's in my drawer cuz it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean they stop on me. And it doesn't matter. The only one I got that hasn't stopped on me yet, but only because I don't wear watches, you know, because of the problem, so it's uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like I'm not used to it. Is the
Mm-hmm.
self-winding one?
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one that will stay working. But anything with a battery or anything that I have to wind up, like wind it up, those don't work. I mean,
Yeah,
they break.
mine's self-winding too. My watch is an Omega. It's a self-winder, and
Yeah, those are the only ones that work. I mean, and then like the street lights, my wife thinks it's really weird. Like we'll be driving through town, and as I'm approaching the streetlight, they go off, and then as I pass, they go on. And sometimes it'll do like 5 in a row. You know, it's like really. I never even think nothing of it. I actually didn't even notice. You know, because I think sometimes the bulbs are going out. You know, that's I chalked it up to that. But my wife's like, no, you know, 5 of them in a row going out. Come on. You know,
right.
but only I don't know. You know, but I know it
Yeah, I
is
think
weird.
electricity is one of those things that because everything in the world really is affected or made of or has something to do with electricity. We have electric currents in our bodies. There's
Mhm.
electric currents in the earth. There's ley lines. There's you know vortexes in certain places on the planet. There's all kinds of things that are either electrical or electromagnetic that can you know affect people's reality either in a good way or a bad way.
Well, I actually think everything's electrical, like the desk I'm sitting at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's wood and it's just sitting there and it's not really a conductor of electricity, there's spaces inside of it because it's atoms, right? It's made out of atoms, and the atoms have electrons and everything, you know, spinning around them. So I mean that it's actually solid, but it's not solid, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
You know, and so I mean I look at everything different now because after going to the other side, dying and going to the other side, and then coming back, I look at everything way different. You know, like it could be solid, but it isn't solid. You know, and that's actually when all my problems started. Not problems, but the weirdness. You know, and also the feelings like that. That's what I loved hanging out with you when we went squatching. I love that part because I don't know very many people that has that where you know we're walking along and everybody's oblivious and you mention things and it gets to the point where you don't even mention to anyone anymore, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
because they don't get it anyways. It has to come jumping out or it has to scream or throw a rock or something, otherwise they don't sense anything, you know, at all. Only when I was like we were bouncing stuff back and forth and I knew you were uh, totally right on the money because I heard it. You know what I mean? like at first I was feeling it and you were feeling it. You know, like we both stopped in our tracks and that tripped me out because you actually stopped before I did. I actually took like 3 more steps and you know stopped. And then I turned around and you were stopped and I was like, "Oh, dang," you know, and that's when I asked you, you know, about that like maybe we shouldn't go this further than this, you know. Like this might be as far as we want to go without a
Yeah.
gun, you know.
Yeah.
And
I was feeling that if one or both of us would have rounded that corner, something bad was about to happen.
yeah, and then when we got the gun, we went back, you know. We went
And it still felt weird, and
yeah.
only to me it felt weird again. Only about an hour later did it kind of. It felt like it's like the kind of feeling where there's a storm and it goes away and the vibe changes.
Right, yeah. Yeah, man.
I have a
Hopefully
videotape of the thunderstorm too. Remember that thunderstorm that was real loud that was right on top of us?
Yeah, I
I,
did too. In
yeah, I
fact,
took a video on my tent. I thought it was pretty funny, but
I have video of what's his name out in the rain tweaking.
oh, that yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to, look, I got to say this. Yeah, I got to come out and say this. So, uh, one of Jeffrey's prime sidekicks was this like 5 foot tall little dude with a sawed-off 12 gauge shotgun
Yep.
for protection, and but the thing was, the dude couldn't go more than what 30 minutes without smoking a bowl full of weed.
Yep.
And when I see someone doing that around a firearm, I'm nervous. And I told Alan at the time, I'm not digging this dude.
Yeah.
And, it's like, one eye on that guy at all times. And I told, even before the falling out with Jeff, I told Alan after we got back, man, that's the last time I go out with that dude.
Yeah. Well, his days were numbered right after that,
Yeah, that was just horrible.
mostly it wasn't because of anything he did to us or what he was, doing that we thought was weird. It was because he questioned the authority, and that was
That
it.
dude doesn't even question authority. He outright looked at Jeff and said, F God, about 10 times. And I'm
Yeah.
like, and then finally I told him, I go, dude, remember I went and told him, hey, I'm not cool with that. You can
Mm-hmm.
have your opinion, but keep it to yourself, because I was starting to get irritated.
Yep.
And, I'm a big, pro gun advocate, but I'm also a big gun safe advocate. I've got nieces that come visit me. When my nieces come, all my stuff gets put in my gun safe. Every last thing. There's not a possibility. I'm super safe. You saw me, Alan, when
Yep.
I had brought a firearm for you to have with you, and I was very, very safe with it. I even asked you. Remember, I kind of quizzed you and said, "Hey, what's your?" Because I didn't know at the time how much experience you had, so I wanted to
Right.
make sure that you're cool with it all. And anytime I see someone drinking or doing drugs around firearms, I'm out.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of like that. Like when we go researching, that's not we're not partying. You know what I
No.
mean? That's not we're not there to party and have fun. I mean, we're there to have fun, but
But how's it
usually,
going to look though if we see her have an experience and we
right?
start off the story by saying, well, we were 3 beers in,
Yeah.
or Alan had this really good weed, or we were drinking this really good scotch, or how does that look? I mean, to me, it defeats the purpose. There's a time and a place for everything, and I think people should do what they want to unwind and relax and have a drink on their own. That's their business. But for me, there's enough challenges when you're in the outdoors, and there's you know real regular creatures to worry about. There's other two-legged creatures to worry about. There's paranormal issues that could pop up. So the last thing I want to do is be impaired in a situation like that.
Well, for me, I was raised like I didn't mind. I don't mind the weed so much, but the beers for sure. But only I was raised that you respect the situation. You know what I mean? Like there's a group out there and they're being serious and they're researching. He could go take a walk. You know what I mean, and go off a little ways. He didn't have to like put it do everything like right in the middle of everything, and that part I thought was disrespectful, and I think it is on anybody that does that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, and I asked Jeff about it because I go, I'm going to change him.
Yeah, that's what he said. I laughed about that. That was good. That didn't happen, by the way. Yeah.
No, would have.
Yeah. So like when now we're looking at when you get down here, I'm gonna have Chris come down and go squatching with me over here. I'm setting up a deal for us, and I haven't heard back yet on what we talked about last night, but I'm totally looking forward to it. It's gonna be pretty good, you know. Got a tip, a hot tip. Only I'm not so sure. Like
I hope so.
the winter is the only thing that's bugging me about the whole thing up there is the snow, down here, there's no snow and there's a lot to look at, to look for and to check out. But only I'm not sure if we'll, if it's like you could see a Bigfoot. You know what I mean? There's only a couple of places down here
Right.
that I think we can, and that would be where we went before. We could take like a day
Right.
trip, or down to the Kings River or the San Joaquin River, but only it's not a given you're going to see anything. You know what I mean? That's the only
Hmm.
thing. But only where the place, the big hot tip that I got, the chances, from what I understand, the guy's going to lead us right to him. Like, and if we want to talk to him and get footage and all that, so I can't wait. And I'm going to tease everybody because that's all I'm going to say about it. But only that's what I got planned with Chris.
And it's funny because I've been around the Bigfoot end of this for a long, long time, and it used to be that um, like paranormal and the Bigfoot didn't really mix,
Right.
but a couple of stories, and I don't know what your opinion is of, or if you know of Jim Lansdale. He's the founder of GCBRO, and he's on the show Killing Bigfoot. So whatever your viewpoint is, pro kill, anti kill, but um, he was on a case that he's talked about in public before, and I think the lady's been on the show before. It's like an ongoing case with this lady. And he started calling me up, and he was telling me and showing me like this weird paranormal evidence. He's like, "Hey, I don't know anything about this stuff. I'm into creatures. I don't know about this stuff." And he was telling me, and I even got some like impressions or ideas of what was going on, and so I was kind of directing him, saying, "Hey, Jim, check this out. Check that out." And it turned out to be correct what I was telling him, which is pretty funny. And he kept wanting me to go down there and help him out with this, the paranormal aspect of it. And just tonight on my way home, I was listening to the latest Sasquatch Chronicles online, and they were talking about killing a Bigfoot, like how to do it and what, the aftermath and just the whole thing behind it. And I was really surprised to hear, like, Woody, Wes's brother, and a couple of the other people on the show saying how much they believed that this thing is paranormal. And I'm thinking, is it really, or are people trying to solve a mystery with another mystery? And is that an excuse because no one's gotten 100% of proof yet?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's another kind of bizarre thing to ponder, because like the lights that people talk about, the little orbs they see in the forest, I've seen those several times, and
Me
I
too.
never equated them with Bigfoot. I don't know that they are or could be, but you know, sometimes I think people get it mixed up, because they see or they hear of a UFO report and then there's a Bigfoot report, so they naturally put two and two together. And I don't know if they're separate things, if they're connected, but it makes it interesting, to think about that. And they were even talking about, Matthew Johnson and his, portals and his mini gargoyles and portals. And they said that some doubter went out there, a scientific guy, and I can't remember his name offhand. They said it. I want to say Andy, but it might not have been Andy. Someone in chat maybe can correct me. Oh, Pam should know because she's a Sasquatch Chronicles person. But I forget the name of the guy, and maybe Pam knows. She can put it in chat. But anyway, supposedly he's a real scientific guy, and he says that he saw the same thing, and these little things like came after them, and the dude had to like run for his life. Is the way they made it sound like.
Like the little
And
gargoyle things?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm not a big Matthew Johnson fan, only because he had a sighting and he kind of got into the subject and for years. And it's like I don't know why he changed and went from like flesh and blood to this, but I sometimes think some people, they're not getting the Adam Davies. That's it. Thanks, Pam. Um, I don't know if they're just like yearning for that limelight or to keep attention or something, or if it's legit. I keep an open mind because listen to some of my stories. They're not much more sane than what Matthew Johnson's talking about. But when I just think of Bigfoot, I just don't think of little people in portals. I think little people in portals may exist, and maybe he really saw those things out there. I don't know, but does it really relate to Bigfoot? I don't know.
Well, one of when you like, I told everybody a few days ago on a live thing when I was at the laundromat. I was talking about doing some more bedtime stories and doing Native American lore, and my wife packed everything. I had a box, and we had to move out of the bedroom. And everybody knows, we're remodeling and all this stuff, fixing up a flood and all this stuff. So I can't find the books, right? But only that, like a lot of the Native American stuff talks about like when they go hang out with the Bigfoots, like say the Bigfoot and marries their sister, right? And they go to where the Bigfoot lives inside of the mountain. When they come out of the mountain, they think they were gone a day. And then when they get back, they find out they were gone 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, so
Hmm.
there is weird things. Like, did they go through a portal? You know what I mean? Like, what did they go when they went into the mountain? Did they go through a portal to a different dimension? You know, I mean that's the only reason I even give any kind of um, I give him the benefit of the doubt because of that. But then that said, the what he's describing now sounds more demonic than anything. You know what I mean? I mean, it really does. Like when the portal opens, it's all red. I mean, when they described, like Adam Davies, when they described what the portal looked like, and the little uh, guardians or whatever. If you read the Skinwalker Ranch about Skinwalker Ranch and research about it, there is some scientists that actually saw portals open up on the Skinwalker Ranch, and with the description that they gave is identical to what was opening up for those guys with Dr. Johnson. Now, do all portals look like that? I mean, he described saying that the sun was getting big and burning up their planet, so they had to come over here. Otherwise they were all going to die. Well, what's the story on the Skinwalker Ranch then? They described the exact identical background and colors that were coming out of the portal, only over there. And even there was Bigfoots coming out of there too. I mean, they described Bigfoots coming out, but they also described some of the things that you talked about earlier. Weird looking dogs with red eyes, and you know all kinds of weirdness coming out of those portals, not just Bigfoots. And sometimes the portals, you couldn't even see it with your eyes. At Skinwalker Ranch, they had to look through like ultraviolet goggles and stuff like that, and then they could see the portal open. Not seeing it open up, but I mean it was open already. And then when they could move the glasses up and down, and they could see the portal. And then when they took the glasses away, they couldn't see it. I mean, so there's some things about Bigfoot I'm not sure about, and it really puzzles me because one minute they're killing a deer and eating it and stuff like that, and then the next minute they're able to go through portals and stuff. But
Yeah, I guess the the issue I'm having is that I don't think spirits or demons or whatever. I don't think that they leave like 2 inch deep impressions,
right, yeah,
in the ground, and I don't think that when you shoot them they bleed, or that they need to. If does a spiritual being need to eat a deer? Probably not. But with that said, and what the latest Sasquatch Chronicles was talking about is if people can be possessed, why couldn't an animal?
Well, but I mean, think
And
of it. Think of it like this. What about like the before the flood? There's giants running around, and it said once the humans couldn't feed them anymore, then they started eating the humans, right? And these are like hybrid, angel human hybrid type things. And they were able to fly, and they were able to, do all this weird stuff, and a lot of them wanted to be worshipped because they had all these powers and everything. But then they were able to be killed too, because God killed them with a flood. And what if those things are some of the things that we're starting to see now? Because they said in the days of Noah, that's what it's going to be like today, or
I mean,
in the end.
there's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was that was all I had there.
Oh no, there's a lot of people that think, and this would explain a lot as to not to get off on a tangent, but aliens and gray aliens that they're demonic, and um, I mean that would explain a lot of things. And the soft disclosure that they had, a couple weeks ago or whatever, or 3 weeks ago, of, oh yeah, this is what we saw in the sky, and this is all planned out. It's like people calling it disclosure. It's not. No one said what it is or what was behind the wheel or if anything. They're just saying there's an object here. We didn't know what it was. It was traveling at high speed, and we've been trying to study them. And that's the slow. That's like that old analogy. How do you boil a frog without him knowing? You throw him in a pot of water and turn up the heat super slow. And my thing is, you can hear people like Steve Quayle talk about it, and L.A. Marzulli is another one that talks about it a lot. That he believes that these aliens are demonic. And you think about it, and they take people away in the night, they kidnap people, they terrorize people, and then you think, well, why would they do these experiments, and why would they need to, or why would they have to? And I think it is all connected, because I think it's an attempt to try and pollute God's bloodline.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's a whole nother 2-hour program.
No
but
kidding, man.
Something we can save for a rainy day. But you can get really deep in that, and it's really interesting. But just historically and everything else, it's about, well, Satan knows already he's a defeated being. He knows he's lost. So the only consolation for him is to take as many with him as he can. And the best way to do that in gigantic millions of people numbers, other than getting us all to fall, prey to, our distractions in life and not what we should be concentrating on, is the bloodline.
Yeah.
The
DNA.
What better way, if you wanted to kill a bunch of people, would you go after them with a 6-gun, or would you pollute their water supply? Think about that for a minute.
Or would they chem spray?
Yeah, I mean that's another
Chem
thing.
spray.
A lot of people are, I'm not sure what that is, but I see them every day in the sky, and people are like, "Oh, well, those are normal." Well, why wasn't it normal when I was a kid?
Right.
They're flying the same planes and the same technology.
Yeah, I used to live in L.A. right on the path where the jets landed, and I mean like we lived at the edge of the runway. And
You lived in El Segundo?
no, it was Westchester.
Oh yeah, Westchester,
You
same
know,
off
it was like
Imperial or something. Yeah.
Airport Boulevard and 96th Street. But only it's not that now. Airport Boulevard's still there, but 96th Street is now part of. It's a parking lot for the airport. They took out all the houses that we. In fact, there was like 500 houses there, and only 3 people, families living in the whole neighborhood, because that's what they were going to do, is turn it into a. But only I remember running around, and they're huge jets, 747s, 737s, 707s, and they didn't leave all this stuff that we see now. And there was just as many of them. I mean, every 15 minutes that a plane would go fly and land there. I mean, it was busy. And the sky never looked like this. Never. It has in the last probably 9 or 10 years started to look like this. And it's actually getting. What if they're spraying like nanobots that get in, that you breathe in, and then they can change your DNA? Kind of like what was that doctor? He passed away, but he was taking the supposedly alien implants out of the people, and he didn't know what it was at first, and
Roger Lear.
yeah, Roger Lear, and then they came to the conclusion right before he passed away that they thought it was changing the DNA of the people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a better way to mess everything up, like you said, is mess up the DNA, the blood. Then you can't get forgiven. You know what I mean? Like, you know, there's no chance for you if they can trick you into that. And we're just sitting around letting it all happen, really.
Yeah, I
Most
mean,
everybody.
I just think there's a lot, and like I said, we can have a dozen shows about a dozen different topics, and another one would be, how some quote unquote man-made religions are just guiding millions, if not billions, of people worldwide down a one-way, trip to hell because they're just not getting it, and it's a huge deception.
Right.
It's one huge deception. It's just like people have heard the Pope say over and over, especially this last one that's in there now. He's all about this unity and, let's get along with our Protestant brothers and all this stuff. No, it's that they want everybody to go their way and their religion of idolatry and just things that most evangelical Christians just don't kind of agree with. And it's all about playing, I think, on people's guilt to get them to like sway in their beliefs. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we got to get along with our brothers and sisters, and guess what? Jesus in the Bible doesn't say that. In fact, it says the opposite, that you're going to be in conflict, and it says over and over, if you love me, people are going to hate you.
Yep.
And that's true.
It is.
And you have to be willing to be hated and looked down upon and chastised and made fun of and this and that. And, and that's nothing compared to, look at how most of the apostles were martyred. And, you're either for me or against me. There's no real in between. There's no lukewarm with God.
Well, I know a lot of people, like, for one reason, how they were raised, maybe, or, they might not, they have a hard time with the religion and all that. And I get it. I mean, like, I got ran out of a few churches just because when they found out, I might go out looking for Bigfoot or whatever, and they ran me out of fear. They sense I'm a demon or I'm, whatever. Only none of them ever had any kind of experience. You know what I mean? Like I didn't find religion because I thought there might be a religion, and then I started reading a Bible. Okay, I didn't find it like that. I didn't have somebody come and to my door and knock on it and hand me some kind of piece of paper, a tract or whatever they call it, and then get me saved. You know what I mean? Like that isn't how I found him. That isn't how I found God. God stepped into my life and actually became as real as the desk is right here, and some of the stuff that, like what you're facing down, when you start seeing these things and they react to this one name every single time, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I've even heard of people that have said that they've had gray alien encounters, and they said finally they got tired of it, or they finally got the nerve up to say, in Jesus' name, leave me alone, and they disappear. So I don't know what more proof you would need than that if you're to believe them at their word, but that right there should tell you what's going on.
Well, I actually have given that advice to people that I've, in the last 8 years or so, I've got to know quite a few people that's got abducted, And I've actually, and on a continual basis from the time they were kids, and it was like a family generational type thing, right? And I actually gave them that advice, and it worked for them. I mean, they now are not being abducted anymore, and they actually feel like they have control and power in their life again. Before, they felt like they had no power, no control, and those things could do whatever they wanted to them. And believe
I mean,
me, it was not sounding too good what they say. The stories they had. It was scary even. In fact, now that we're on this subject, we this spring, and you're invited. Um, Adolf wants to go out to the place where he was getting abducted, him and his friends, up at Courtright Lake at the
hmm
101102, the 101102 guys. And he wants to have a camp out, and everybody's invited, right? Everybody that can get here. And as we get closer, I'll give the date. And we'll all go out there, and that'll be the main topic of the day, is we'll sit and talk about abductions and all that stuff. And hopefully nothing happens, like we don't have missing time, or anything like that, because I'm not sure, like that's a scary thing to me, is if these things, maybe they can't do anything to the person that has the armor on, but maybe they can, who knows, it's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. But only I know the Squatches, like, they glow their eyes. They do some things that, like, I came from I started off like the flesh and blood, always flesh and blood, but then I've had so many weird things happen that I can't explain, that I'm not as far out there as Matthew Johnson, but only I'm a little bit out there in the woo land. You know what I mean? Like, they some things I can't explain, and I don't know how they did it. What I don't know what happened, and I'm not an expert or anything either on any of things that we just talked about. All I know is what works and what doesn't work. That's about it as far as that goes. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen it and heard it too many times to even doubt it. It's just I'm sure,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I
I'm
died.
100% sure
So
of it.
on the God thing, I died. I went on the other side, and I met him, and you know, I'm not afraid of death anymore. And people can say whatever they want about that, but when have they been on the other side and been face to face with them? I did. And what I did find out was, um, that's where we're all going to go, at least that we have the opportunity to. And what we do here really counts. You know what I mean? Like, the little things count. Like, and the biggest little thing is forgiveness. That's the one thing I learned, and out of all the things, that was the only thing that really mattered the most, was forgiveness. For and
You would have to say that. That's not my strongest suit.
Well, it wasn't mine either, man. I was a heathen, and I still have problems with it. And I, when you look at that, when you look at when you look at that concept of forgiving or holding grudges or whatever, that's like part of what's wrong with society. They want to blame people for, like, I didn't have a dad, so I'm all messed up, and I can't forgive the old man, for not being there for me and messing me up, and I can't. It's like that. I mean, that's basically what's wrong. That they say that's what's wrong with our society, is that kind of stuff,
But
holding grudges.
let me ask you something though. So it says in the Bible and all over, the place, ask and I'll give it to you, and ask for, it's kind of the recurring theme is ask. So my question is, and that's for you, and any of our chat scholars that we have there. What if the person doesn't ask you for forgiveness or doesn't feel that they need to ask you? Or, I mean, sure, you could say in your brain, I forgive them, but it's not true forgiveness until, you know what I'm saying? If that makes sense, is like, can you truly forgive someone that doesn't ever ask for it?
Well, it's like say somebody did something to you and then they died. Okay, like a year later or something, and
Mm-hmm.
you're holding the grudge, and then they died, but you still are like, that was bad enough that you still hold it against them even past their death. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That
But let's just say they're still living, and let's say, well, I have a really easy example for you, uh, Alan. Let's say a certain someone that you used to be on a certain program with just didn't feel that, never said, "Hey, sorry, will you forgive me?" How do you deal with that?
I forgive him because and I don't have to go tell him or anything. It's more like for our own good. You know what I mean? It's not for them. Um, because whatever they do doesn't affect me. You know what I mean? Unless they shot me or hit me with a bat or whatever. We don't. Even then, it's just going to send me where I'm going to anyways. You know what I mean? Like this life will end and then I'll be in the next realm. I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't really. All it does is quicken my trip to the other side. You know. But only what I found when I was on the other side was this might sound really weird, but everything is written on your heart. Okay, so when he looks at you, when you're on the other side, or even this side, if he comes and pays you a visit, and I know several people that he's actually wound up being right there in the same room as them, and they didn't believe in him either. You know what I mean? Like far from it. They were channeling aliens and doing all kinds of stuff, and then all of a sudden Jesus shows up right there, and everything was on their heart. All he had to do was look at their heart, and then when you look that up in the Word, it says that what comes out of your mouth actually is what's in your heart. So, like, all he has to do to know everything about what's up with you is look at your heart. He'll know instantly everything about you by reading your heart. In fact, like when say you're asking for certain things, like what's weird about me and Christians and maybe a lot of other religions, they always go with a list. You know what I mean? Like their prayers they have a list of things like, hey God, give me a job, do this, do that, you know you don't even have to have the list, because if he's listening to you and he's looking at your heart, he already knows what your need is. Just go in there and love him as much as he loves you, and he'll add all them things unto you because of it's written on your heart. You don't got to ask for anything really. You just got to acknowledge him and give everything to him, and make sure you forgive everybody. You don't want him, because he said if you can't forgive, then he can't forgive. That's kind of like a rule, and that's what I learned being on the other side, going to the other side. That part. Yeah, and I don't know how that goes. Like I don't understand a lot of stuff, but only that part I understand really, really well. Those two little things. Then when it comes to ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoots and all that, I have so many questions. I'm still looking. Like how does it all fit? What are they what they say they are all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I mean, it's all interesting, but when it boils down to it, you know, you kind of come in by yourself and you go out by yourself, and what you do in between is up to you.
Yeah, I was asking this girl at the pharmacy today, like this might be something everybody could ask theirself. Like we don't get to pick who we're born, where we're born. what family we're born, what part of the world we're born. Like, what if you were born a Rothschild or a Trump or Obama, or, what if you were born in those families, or what if you were born in the Middle East? I mean, you don't get to choose that. You know what I mean? Like, how would you be different? No, that's one thing. Like, and I always wondered, like, do we get to pick that? Are we over there and telling God, ooh, them, I want to be with them? Do we, like, I don't know. I'm just surmising, but, that's something I think about, things like that. Like, what if I would have been born a Rothschild? How would I be?
Rich,
Yeah.
probably snooty.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, man. That some things, that's kind of questions I have like that. But I'm pretty happy with where I am at though, and what I do and all that.
Hmm.
How about you? Do you feel like you're landed in your where you're happy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy with my life. I've got a good job, albeit in a weird place with some weird people. I have a wonderful wife. I have a good, my I have a son I'm real proud of that lives, down south, down in El Segundo, that I see, go down and see every couple months. And
Damn, that's
I,
cool.
I have everything a man could want. And I'm sure it's more than I deserve, you know. So I, I try to be humble about a lot of stuff. And my wife and I we both enjoy donating to a lot of different causes. And even when I was between careers, but a few years back, I we had a lot of tithing going on that was automatically taken out. And when I lost my job, we talked about it, and wow, can we really afford to do this? And I said, well, I think I'd feel weird not doing it. And we try to be as generous as we possibly can, not just at the holidays, but all the time. Because it's I think it just, sometimes my wife and I will be at a restaurant. We'll just pick someone out randomly across the restaurant. We'll get the waitress and say, hey, bring us their check.
Nice.
We don't say
I
anything.
like
We
doing
just pay
that.
it and take off and figure, hey, they're getting something nice. And, it's not just money, but unfortunately, it's time and stuff too. But let's face it, money helps,
Oh yeah. Oh
and,
yeah. I agree
with,
100% on that.
yeah. And there was a lady that works for me, and one day she looked very depressed. I said, what's wrong? And she says, look at this. And she showed me a video, which I actually wish she wouldn't have on her phone. And it was a picture of a lady in a hospital bed. And she was just like writhing in pain and obviously very under a lot of pain and agony. And I was a little taken aback. And I said, well, what is that? Or who is that? And she said, that's my sister. She was a severe diabetic, and they had to amputate her legs, her feet, her legs. And I said, "Oh my goodness, that must be really horrible," And I'll say a prayer for her. Hopefully, she gets better. But in about 2 weeks, I walked by when she was working, and I asked her, how's your sister doing? And she said she just started crying and said, "Oh, she passed away." And
Dang.
so she came in on an off day for her paycheck, and she wasn't working that day. And I said, "Oh, how come you're coming to get your check?" She said, I'm going to buy ingredients to make pozole, soup,
Right.
and I'm going to sell it door to door because my sister's husband and kids don't have any food in Mexico. They're starving."
Oh man.
So here's a lady that was coming to get her check, and she doesn't make much money,
Right.
and she was going to sell soup door to door to send money. So I discussed it with my wife, and the next day she came to work, and I called her in my office. It was after her shift, and she was already out of her uniform and changed back in her street clothes. And I called her in my office and I shut the door and I said, you know, this has nothing to do with the company. It has nothing to do with me being your boss. It has nothing to do with anything other than me just being your friend. And I pulled out of my pocket because like I said, my wife and I talked about it and we both agreed. And I handed her $100.
Nice.
And I said, I know this isn't much, but you know, at least you could, you know, send it and you know, to your sister and help her out a little bit. And you know, it's not the fact that it's not the money at all. It's just the fact that I felt so sorry for her, and still to this day, she's very, you know, kind of depressed all the time. You can tell it's still really weighing on her, and it's just sad. And you know, you know, I volunteer for our local food bank once in a while. We do a lot of things around Christmas time. We adopted a family that it was a lady who had to flee an abusive relationship, and she had a family with a bunch of kids. And so a friend of mine at work had the information, so my wife and I went out and, you know, bought a bunch of stuff for her and the kids and that. And it's just, you know, I think if you can help out, either time, money, however you can help, you know, it just, it makes you feel good. You always get more out of it than you give,
Yeah,
you know.
I agree. In fact, speaking of like what topic we're on, it reminds me of something that I wanted to bring up tonight. You know, like I don't know if he's in chat, John Roslin. You guys all remember John Roslin in chat, and we all prayed for him, and he had stage 4 cancer. Did you hear what I just said? He had stage 4 cancer. He had it in his brain. He had it in his colon and several other places in his body. And we started praying for him here. And I had been praying for him a little while before that, right? Well, he just got news back recently. All the cancer in his brain is gone, completely gone. All the cancer everywhere in his body is gone. And it took several tests on different times, you know. And they didn't tell us all about that there was no more cancer until yesterday. But we can all praise God because he heard our prayers and he healed John Roslin of cancer, stage 4 cancer in the brain, in the colon, and all that around. So everybody that helped, you know, prayed with us for John, that there's a miracle. And I would love to like any other people that wants to be prayed for, you know, go ahead and keep on putting them in the comments and stuff like that. Prayer works. Prayer works. And you're totally right. You know, that $100, you never know what God made it. He could have made it $1 million. You know what I mean? Like, you gave 100, but only by the time it got to where it was going, it might have multiplied a whole bunch of times, you know, or bought more than, you know what I mean? Like the blessing would have, when it got to Mexico, it maybe bought 10 times more than it normally would have. You know what I mean? God is good like that. Like, he can multiply things, like the loaves of bread, you know, and the fish, 5 loaves and 12 fish, I think it was, and he fed 5,000 people. I mean, like, it isn't the size that matters on these kind of things. It's actually the intention, you know. And we all had the intention when we were praying for John, and John got healed. And it was a little bit of everybody's faith that I think that did that. And your $100, I don't know why, but only I have a feeling that went real far over there. Real far, farther than it normally does. You know, I just have a feeling. And then when you talk to people like her about her sister and stuff like that, talk to her like she's not dead. Like, her sister's not dead, actually more alive than her. And not far away either, but only just in a realm that we can't see. You know what I mean? It might be like really close to us. Like, she might even be right there. more life than us. More life. No pain, no suffering, no anything, but alive, more alive than us. And someday we'll be there too, and more alive than we are now. I mean, it's an interesting concept thing. Interesting thing. I talk to my wife all the time. Her brother died of cancer, and we talk about that all the time. Like, you know, she acts like he's gone, and I'm like, no, he's not. He's not gone. He's gone from our realm, but he's as much alive as he was, when he was here. Actually, more so. It's just an interesting way. It's how we look at it, I guess. You know. But only that's a good thing that you did, man. Really good. I do that too. Like I'm looking at Larry in the chat. Like he was my guest a while back. He's actually my cousin, stepson, and he's like a miracle. He beat the cancer and all that. And it's an interesting thing what we could do with our faith.
I mean, we don't. There used to be I used to like, and I know those of you, some of you may remember now, there used to be a television show years ago, and it was called Love Thy Neighbor. I don't know if you remember this or not. And then the reason I remember is it used to be on either right before or after Bowling for Dollars, which is another show that, anybody under the age of, 150 like me wouldn't know. But for those of you that don't know
I
what it
remember
was,
that one.
do you remember that show, Alan?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and what it was, for those of you that don't, it was a show where, people that were genuinely poor or down on their luck would call in or get picked on the show, and they'd say, Bob from San Diego, could really use a refrigerator and a stove, and people would call in and either donate the whole thing or donate money, and usually within 10 seconds they'd have enough money for, and they'd show the people, and they were very deserving and very thankful. And it was a really good concept. And it was on for a few years, so best I can remember, and then it went away. And I've always thought, a show like that, I don't know if it would get good ratings, but it certainly would be a whole lot more constructive than Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Man, it really would. You have you noticed like what the Christians are talking about today? There a lot of them are preppers now. Have you noticed that?
Right.
Like they're all selling. They're all selling, buckets of food and stuff like that, and get yourself prepared and all this stuff. It's kind of weird to see them doing that. Being preppers. And I believe in prepping, though. I actually do. I actually think that all of us should have a backup plan, because we never know what's going to happen. There could be a tornado or earthquake or whatever, anytime. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. You know what I mean? It could be things happen. All my life, I remember when we lived in L.A., the San Andreas fault went off and destroyed our house. That's how come we moved up here. But it would have been nice if we would have had a little food and stuff like that, because it really tore everything up, and the electricity was down. But I think everybody should have a little bit of food, or a little, at least a few days of stuff, water and stuff like that. But these guys are ready for like years. Who is it? I was watching that one guy. I didn't even know. I thought he was in prison, but he just got out, or he's been out, I guess. Tammy Faye. I can't even remember his name, but
Jim Baker.
Yeah, the baker. And then I seen his show, man, and he was like, his commercials on there were like 15 minutes, of selling all this food and oatmeal and all this stuff. I was like, dang, man. And he was. I actually, after I saw his show, I kind of Googled over to check out what happened to him? He had to see something in prison to turn him into that. Either that or it's all about the money. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, water's probably the biggest thing. If you got a good source of water, and that's half the battle. But in a situation like that, I mean, unfortunately, the first people that are the most vulnerable people are those on medication.
Yeah,
Because if you have a medication that's keeping you alive and you can't get to the pharmacy, or the pharmacy's been, looted,
ransacked.
and your doctor's no longer around. I mean, how do you get what you need? So, I
Yeah, and
mean,
they don't.
thankfully, I'm not on any regular medications. But if I had to be, I would probably be stockpiling stuff like medication and stuff just in case.
Well, I they won't let you stockpile it anymore. The insurance companies won't. It's like 30 days to 30 days, 90 days at the most. Yeah, because I was trying to. I have to take Plavix
Hmm.
because of the heart stents. I got 4 stents on my heart, so the Plavix it thins the blood, but not only does it thin the blood, it coats the inside of the stent so that the platelets and everything don't stick to it. So nothing sticks to it, so it'll flow right through there, right?
Like WD-40.
Yeah, kind of like. And if I go 3 or 4 days without it, I'm gonna die. That's straight up what they told me. It'll start clogging up, and I'll have a heart attack and be gone. But I was trying to stockpile that. You know, like I was trying to get like 6 months worth and stuff like that, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. It was crazy. And the insurance company won't pay for it at all. That's what I found out. My insurance won't pay for it. So I would have to pay. I guess I could probably get a prescription from the doctor and then buy it cash, but I don't know how much it would cost.
Hmm.
That would be the only way. That would be the only way around it. Is that? But then if you're talking pain medication, and you went in there with like a 6 month supply, and you're going to pay cash, before you even left the store, you'd be arrested because the pharmacy would call the cops on you. Even though you're not robbing them or anything, you did everything legit. They would still call the cops because they think that you're, some kind of low life street thug drug addict. It really is sad.
Yeah. The only thing I could say is for those that are on the permanent meds, I would try your best to get a good supply.
Oh, yeah, I guess it looks like some people in chat have that. Like, see, 3 months at $50, and Costco was 35. I love Costco. That's my favorite store.
I know, but you go in there and you go broke.
Yeah. Same with the 99-cent store.
Yeah, but if you're gonna go broke there, you're going out with a whole cartload of stuff.
True, true.
Costco, you can buy one item and just be done for the month.
Yep. I only buy like certain things though, like coffee and water. They have these big packs of water that's pretty cheap. That's how I do the water, and then water. I don't trust it. Like if we're gonna use it, like uh, what do you call it? Stocking up. It, it's not good to let it sit there for a long, long time. So you have to kind of cycle it through.
Right.
You know, otherwise
Yeah,
it
that's
gets.
where I'm kind of light on is probably water. I got enough food for a year, and I got enough, firearms and stuff to defend it. I mean, I think everybody should have at least one weapon of some kind,
Yep.
and not necessarily be a gun, but something that'll help you defend what you have. Because you talk about, zombies are fake, but you take a guy who hasn't had water for 3 or 4 days, and his infant kid's about to die because he hasn't had water in a couple days, and you'll just see what that guy is going to be willing to do to save his kid, and sees you walking down the street with a bottle of sparklets, you better be prepared to defend it.
Yeah. Well, I bought life straws. I have some life straws. I,
Yeah, I've got a couple
yeah.
of those myself.
I mean, it's good for sucking out of the gutter or whatever.
I know. That's what I was just thinking. At least I can drink gutter water.
Man, you know what I was going to ask you? Like, it's something I never asked you, and it's something I like to know about a little bit about everybody. Like, what is it that, I mean, we met, I know how we met and everything, but what drew you, what was the thing that drew you to the paranormal? You want me to start listening to those shows and
Just probably my own, just my personal experience because, let's take a trip back in time. I mean, I'm 56. I was born in 61. So my first recollection of this stuff happened, let's just say when I was 4. So let's just call it 65. Well, how many people talked about this stuff in 65? Nobody.
nobody. That was
And it's,
horror movies.
yeah, if you talked about it, I made the mistake when I was about 10 years old of saying something to my schoolyard buddies. And you know how kids are, and I'm sure I was one of them, but they teased me really hardcore for, a week or two, and then we went on to something else and they forgot. But, I learned then don't open your mouth or say anything to anybody. Nobody's going to believe you.
Right.
So then, when people finally started, talking about it, and, I can't remember what was the first like ghost hunter show. Was it Ghost Hunters? With the two guys, and
Yeah,
I don't know.
taps.
It's probably one of the first when that came out. Became popular, and all of a sudden, not only was paranormal acceptable, it became cool. And I'd always listened to like Art Bell from day one when he first started on Coast to Coast, and I just I wanted to see what everybody else out there, if anybody else was seeing and experiencing the same thing as I was, and if so, what were they doing about it? And these ghost programs, they go in there and they stir up a bunch of trouble, and then they leave, and I think they make it worse for the occupants.
Yeah, they
And
do. I think that I agree with you on that. Man.
I mean, if you're going to go in there and stir something up or look for something, then you need to make it leave when you're finished.
Well, a lot of times they nothing happens while they're there anyways. It's all fake. That's the sad part is Bigfoot's ghost, chupacabra, all that stuff. It doesn't come on cue. You know what I mean? It doesn't enter the screen and do screaming or anything on cue at all. And then they think one day, they're only there one day or one night, and it might be not the night, but they'll make it the night. If you hang out with these TV crews, they'll make it happen. And then when you watch it on TV, you're like, wow, man. Like I worked with some of them, so nothing happened. And then they were making it up. But when I watched it on TV later, like 12 or 13 months later, I was like, man, they really made it seem real.
But
you
but
know?
the problem is, um, these shows, they're if they get no results, there's no show, or there's no ratings. There's no, I mean, paranormal research is usually probably pretty boring. I've never had to go out and research it because it's always kind of found me.
Right.
You know, but if someone came to me and said, "Hey, we'll give you $1 million to prove this is real," short of having them hang out with me for every minute of every day for a couple weeks, how in the heck would I prove it, even if they did? I mean, so that doesn't make really for good TV, and they have these little voice boxes and turn on my flashlight and do this, and it just doesn't. I mean, the shows today just don't thrill me too much.
Do they even
Yeah.
have those shows anymore? I thought they all stopped. Oh, I think I lost. Yeah, are you still there?
Yeah, no, there's a couple of them still out.
Oh, all of a sudden, a lot of noise stopped. Your thing got quiet for a second. It was weird
Hmm.
because I've been hearing this sound. Like I was telling you before we went on, like a air or the wind blowing, kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, it quit, and it was total quiet except for. And then when you talked, it was like, whoa, but it came back. I'm hearing it again.
Oh, you hear it now again?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I don't think they can hear it. I think it's quiet for everybody out in the world. But yeah, man, let's see. 9:52, so like 8 minutes. Anything else you got on your mind? Yeah, we'll
Um,
make this like a quickie, like 8 minutes, and we'll call it.
um, no, okay, I got a quickie for you. Here's a quickie, and I'm sure this lady's just probably a little bit not so sane, but you guys will think this is funny. So when I moved into the house I'm in, I literally said a prayer. I said, God, I want to have a place that these beings can't penetrate. So I need 6 angels, top, bottom, all 4 sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a couple weeks ago during Christmas time, I always put out just a couple, like a deer, and my wife made this really nice decoration that goes over the archway in front of our porch, but I put out very few things, like 2 or 3 little decorations, very simple. And 6:30 in the morning, my doorbell rings. I'm like, what the heck? It's still dark outside, and you answer the door, at least I do, with a pistol. And who knocks on your door at 6:30, right?
Right.
So it's my next door neighbor, Carolyn, and she says, Chris, you've got to do something about your angels. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And she's like, they're singing so loud, I can't sleep. They must be your decorations. You've got to turn them down. And I looked at her. I said, Carolyn, I don't have any decorations that make noise. And she's like, no, 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 you've got to hear it. And I said, okay. And it was like literally 25 degrees outside. I was freezing. I didn't have a jacket. And I went outside and I go, okay, I just don't hear anything. She goes, come in my backyard. You've got to hear it. It was just blaring, these angels. They kept singing these heaven songs over and over.
Wow.
And I said, okay. So I went in her backyard. I didn't hear anything. So then she says, you got to come in and hear it. It's in my bedroom. So I kind of started, okay, I don't know, I want to walk into my neighbor's bedroom, but I'll get as far as the kitchen. I looked in her bedroom. I go, I just don't hear anything. You hear them now? And she goes, well, of course I don't hear them now. They stopped, but they were singing so loud. They've been keeping me up all night.
Dang.
So I said to her, well, I don't know what to tell you. And I think it just may be something with her, maybe. I don't know. But I just thought it was kind of humorous that she said my angels were singing so loud they were keeping her awake.
That's really cool. And you know what?
I thought it was funny. I mean, even if the lady, was just hearing it in her head, I think it's just still very ironic and very funny.
But only you know what it is. I've talked to several people now over the last, I think, about a year,
Mm-hmm.
and they're telling me they see angels and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and they're praying for him, right? And one of them even prayed that his eyes be open so that he could see him, and the next thing you know, he was seeing him. Like looked out the window and they were standing in his driveway.
Wow.
Like guarding his place, and he was having some problems. Like people. He was actually fearing for his life, really, and then he prayed for the angels, and when he looked out the window, they were there. But I've heard stories already. You're like the third one in a year about angels. That's really cool, man. I mean, that's really cool.
I got a friend that he's a Christian guy and everything, and he rides a Harley. And he was going down the road one day, and he said all of a sudden he saw this angel was like hunched over his bars with one hand on each side of his tire. And he's like, what the heck? He thought he was like suffering from like some delusion or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he said, they were doing up to 80 miles an hour. They were coming back from some like run, and he said he gets off the freeway because when he got off the freeway, the angel was gone, but his bike started riding funny.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so he took it to a local guy, and they put it on a motorcycle lift.
Mm-hmm.
And when they lifted it off, the front tire rolled off.
Oh, my God.
And the guy looked at him and just turned white and said, "How did you ride this bike? There's like no bearing left. This thing could have fallen off. You know, where'd you come from? You rode this all the way over here from your house?" And he goes, "No, man, I just came back from like an hour away." And the guy was just blown away. He's like, "This is physically impossible that this wheel stayed on."
Whoa.
Yeah. So I mean, you never know. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's like, man, that's almost like the one. I mean, I didn't see an angel. Only we were down in L.A. and there was an accident where, I mean, it was a bad old accident, and we kind of pulled up like before the cops and everything had got there. So we're like, my dad handed me a bunch of flares, and he said, go set the flares. And he was like directing everybody, Mr. Sheriff, and he directed everybody where to be and all this stuff. And after I set the flares, I didn't really have a job, so I just went back and was leaning on the car. But there was some fatalities in this one, right?
mm,
And one of the guys that was in the crash, and he was directing traffic, and man, he had blood all over him, and I just thought that he got, how when you get cut on your head, it'll bleed like crazy, but it really isn't that bad sometimes.
right, right.
So I thought that's what it was. And we were standing there, and then the cops and the ambulances and everything show up, and this guy was directing traffic, and the highway patrol says, "Hey man, come on over here, we got everything under control, you don't need to be over there now, like get out of traffic." And the guy walks over and he goes, "Is everything under control?" He's like, "Yeah, everything is under control. We need to have you looked at. Look at you." Soon as the guy, just right then, he just dropped right to the ground. And luckily,
Wow.
there was paramedics right there, right? And we're standing there looking at him, and the paramedic is checking him, and he's like, "No way." And the highway patrol is like, "What's the matter?" He's like, "He's dead." And like, wow, we watched him drop dead. He goes, "No, he had to be dead the whole time he was dead." They're like, "What?" He goes, the artery in his neck was cut, and he bled out a long time ago. I mean,
Wow.
he was dead, but he was directing traffic. And then the highway patrolman says, he goes, "Wow." He goes, like, that's about the second time that happened to him in his life, that some people keep themselves alive until they know everything's safe, and then when they know everything's safe, they just drop dead, or succumb to whatever. You know what, man?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's scary. The
I, I had kind of a similar situation at work. There was a guy who got in a car wreck. Long story short, he got in a car wreck the night before we all worked on a Saturday, and that Saturday, two guys said they watched him walk into work. They talked to him. He reacted, didn't talk back, but reacted physically to what they said, went into his cubicle and disappeared. And they didn't know what the hell was going on. They were confused. And then the phone rang. They picked it up, and it was the guy's ex-wife saying he'd been killed in a car wreck like 10 hours prior.
Whoa,
And this guy
whoa,
came and told me I used to be, a complete disbeliever about all this stuff, but I saw this guy, and he looked as solid as can be. And real quick, I know you want to go, but the same guy came to me twice. And I even told him his name was Mike. I says, "Mike, you know you're dead, right?" He's like, "Yeah." And I go, "What are you here for?" And
whoa.
and at one point, he and I were on his property, and he goes, "I just wanted to see my house one last time." And I said, "Okay." He came back to me a second time, and he started talking to me. His mouth was moving. I couldn't hear, like nothing was coming out. And I'm like, "Dude, you got to talk louder. I can't hear you." And finally, sound came out, and his son worked with us too. It was Mike Jr. He says, "Tell Mike Jr. to search my toolbox," because at the time we were all machinists. We all had these really nice machinist toolboxes. So the following day, I told the kid, I couldn't tell him why I knew.
Right, yeah.
I just said, "Hey, your dad told me he used to hide stuff in his toolbox. Make sure you search it really thoroughly." And we had these little cardboard tubes that end mills come in, milling machine bits that come in, and they're in various sizes. And he picked one up, and it felt kind of heavy, and he heard something inside. He popped it open and dumped it out, and it was the guy's wedding ring,
Whoa.
the guy who'd passed away. So the kid comes back to me and said, "Hey, good tip on my dad's clock. I just found his wedding ring." So I'm sure that's why he came back to me in some form and said, And then, I have an experience like that, and then there's other people that say, "Well, all ghosts are demons. None of them are good." So I don't know even what to believe because I've had some of both. So I don't know what like I said, that's for another show. But
Well, I
you
know a
know,
little. I know a little bit about that though. Like when we don't stick around for like 200 years. You know what I mean? But only they might, like if there was something he was lucky to find you, that you were able to see him and he was able to talk with you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But that was probably the last time you saw him. He got his message across, and then he moved on. He went
yeah. I
on.
never saw him again. No one ever saw him again. That was after he showed up at work and everything.
Yeah, because I've talked to a lot of people that died, because I died and I want to know. You know what I mean? So they're a lot of them wandered around for a little bit, and then they came back, to life. But they didn't go where I went. They had something they wanted to see or do here first, but it wouldn't take 200 years. You know what I mean? Like they weren't haunting anyone or haunting nothing, but they hung around a little while making sure that what everything was okay, and then they you never see him again. The and I think I think that if you want, you could, like, when you're on the other side, if you want to visit your family, you can if you want to, but you're not gonna stay for months. You're gonna pop in, see everybody's okay, maybe let them see you. The ones that can anyway see you, well, you'll let them see them, and then they gone, or they'll come in a dream or something like that, and then they're back where they're staying. You know, pretty good stuff, man. That was a good one. That's interesting. That
Yeah,
that's that's what keeps me going in this kind of thing, is that kind of things.
I mean, to me, like for another show, I'll tell you sometime about how I actually had a miracle from God that kept me alive, and it's no less incredible than if I told you I sprouted wings and flew.
Oh, I believe it.
It's that incredible. And I often wondered, this happened when I was about 18, and I often wondered, I almost had survivor's like remorse. I'm like, well, why would God spare me? I know God spared me, but why would he spare me? And, you hear about a little kid drowning in a flood or
Mm.
catching a disease or dying from malnutrition. And I went through a long period of feeling very guilty about just the fact that I was alive, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because I've always been a humble person with a big conscience, and then I fast forward and I think what's happened in my life since then. I'm like, well, was it to have my son? Was it to work 27 years at my other career? Was it to meet the people I'm with now? Was it to meet Alan Thomas? Was it to talk to these people in chat? Was it to talk to my neighbor? I mean, you never know what God's plan is, and that's the spice I think of life is if you put yourself in neutral and take off the brakes and take your hands off the wheel, and just let it go with where you're meant to go. Life's pretty interesting and it's pretty good.
Well, like, what you were saying there. It could even be, uh, the guy at the grocery store that you always go to is watching how you act.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It could be only that was the only reason, is that God needed you to be you in front of him. You know what I mean? Like a bunch of times.
it
I
could
mean,
be that little kid that knocked on your door, Alan, to sell you a candy bar, and you were very nice to him.
right? Yeah, it could be. Oh well, those things are going to be. That's the little things. That's some of the little things that are big things
Hmm.
that I referred to. There's a whole bunch of them, a whole bunch of them. like when you snap at somebody, you know. I mean, it's not going to keep you out of heaven, but only
Right.
when you get there, they're going to remind you. You know what I mean? That's you're going to go there thinking it was your car and your house and your accomplishments and all that stuff. None of
Hmm.
that matters. That only matters here. You know,
Right.
over there, it's the matters of the heart. You know.
Yeah. And tonight I've touched on a lot of the negatives, but I have had some,
Hmm?
you know, positives. When it comes to this, because one time someone asked me, you seem to have this, whatever you want to call it. Some say a gift, some a curse, but does everything good ever come of it? And there has been some good things that come of it, and I'm not gonna give it away because I'm saving it for our next show, Alan. But I'll tell
Cool.
you a verifiable story about how I helped catch a murderer in Boise, Idaho, from my office in El Segundo.
Nice. I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, I'll tell
Man.
you the one about the lady who was panicking on Pal Talk one night. I don't know if you ever. Pal Talk was a big thing for Bigfoot research back in the day.
Uh huh.
And I happened to be in a paranormal Pal Talk group, and this lady started freaking out because she couldn't find her medicine. She said she was going to have a heart attack, like live on computer, with a bunch of people, and she literally was panicking.
Wow.
And I told her exactly what her pills were, and she argued with me. They're not there, and I said, "Ma'am, please, you're going to look here and you're going to find them." And a couple minutes later, she's like, "Oh my God, I found them." And it was in, I'll tell you that story too. It was in a really weird, obscure place.
Well, I tell you what, man. I have a feeling that really we were meant to be like meeting each other and doing stuff. And I mean, I felt like that on the very first day we met. Um, because like we hit it off like really good, and actually the other two really did ruin the weekend. You know what I mean? Like it started
Yeah,
off really really good, and it stayed really good between me and you. But only those guys, they were the big distraction. You know what I mean? It could have
yeah.
been way better, and I think we have those way betters coming. You know, I'm
Yeah,
sure of
because
that.
just by even just talking about this, my goal is super simple.
Mm,
My goal is not to be famous. My goal is not to be on
right.
TV. I mean, for me, you know, you've seen me, Alan. I've got a face for radio.
Yeah. Well,
Just kidding.
so do I.
But I'm
I
just
could I
saying,
could
if
stop
me,
a
for me,
train. You know, like.
for me, if I can help one person, even if it's someone in the chat room that is curious or needs help with something or wants to contact me on the side, or I'm glad to help. And if I can help one person in all of the agony and pain and fear I went through for 40 some years, would be worth it to me. And I've been lucky enough to help a few people, and I'm hoping that before it's my time that I get an opportunity to help some more. And that could be the reason. Maybe I was spared because I was meant to help a few people. You know.
I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. Man, I am. I'm sure of that. Yeah, well, I before we go, I wanna like bring everybody up to on we I got plans and stuff like that to do a few things like with Chris. The winter is kind of hurting me. Got some family members that are not, they're doing better. Everything's doing better, but you never know how everything goes. Only everything's going to get a little bit better as I figure all this stuff out and I'm going to bring it, and I'm not really, I'm like you, I'm not out to be famous or nothing like that. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm just doing it for the fun and, and to share everything that we do with everyone because some people can't get out, and the ones that can, if they're ever close, like come with us.
Yeah, that would be cool. Alan and I have been talking, about how cool it would be to get, for those of us can do it. I know you guys are from all around the country, obviously, and everything, but it would be so cool to get together for, a weekend camp out, just to, meet and greet, talk to people, do a
Yeah.
little, poking around if possible, but just hanging out and sharing a good time would be awesome. Um, I'm in it too, just because, like you said, it's fun for me. Um, and it's educational for me too. As much as I think I know about some things, I know nothing about others. And the people that follow you, Alan, are all super nice, intelligent, really cool people. So um, I'm just really happy you finally broke out on your own, because I think you're 1,000 times. Now you can be yourself. Now you can, you've the muffler's been taken off. You can be yourself now, and uh, you know, and
Well,
actually
man, it
have
hasn't
something.
hasn't been easy though. Like uh, we were on running on somebody else's schedule and how they do
Right,
things, and then once I was free of it, then it was like, now what? You know, like, man, the sky's the limit. Or I mean, I could do anything. And it kind of had to soak in. Like, wow, I can do anything. And then it was like, oh man, started looking at all the options. It was like looking down the cereal aisle.
right.
There's like all these different flavors of cereals and this and that and boxes, and I could do it in bags. I mean, like, wow, okay, now I have to figure out how, like, narrow it down to a shelf. Like, I don't want to be like so out there, but
Hmm.
I'm slowly feeling my way. Like, it's like I'll find the light switch pretty quick. It's like fumbling around in the dark, and I'll find the light switch.
There's something to be said for that old saying that you're known by the company you keep. And if
Mhm.
you look at some of these folks in chat, you know, there are people that may or may not have known you from that other place, but they followed you over here, or you've attracted them. And it's not flash, it's not fluff, it's not fame or fortune, or it's not BS.
Right.
You know, some of my stories, all admittedly, people might be listening thinking, wow, what's this guy smoking? And that's cool. It doesn't even offend me, because I know it's wacky, some of it. But with that said, A, in general, about everything, I'm an honest person, but it's the one thing that my friends that know me know. I like to joke around about a lot of things, but one thing that you'll never hear me joke about or lie about is the paranormal. And if I tell you something, that means at least I believe and have the experience. You may look at me and say, well, maybe he's crazy, but you know, I have enough enough legitimate things and crazy stories that my imagination doesn't go that deep to make this stuff up,
That's
which is cool. And I feel that, you know, I think people appreciate it for what it is. I think it's fun. And like I said, man, if I can even help one person or learn something myself, then it's a win for me.
Yeah, well, it's fun. Like, tonight was the first time I ever Skyped, right? You helped me through that one. I didn't even know if I could, do a Skype. I know I set everything up for it. The next thing I'm going to try is a video Skype to see if I can do the video part too. Like, I got the audio and everything, and it worked like how it was supposed to work. So now I've done a couple of phone calls. I tested the Skype thing. There's not much else really except for the video on the Skype, and
Yeah, I'll agree to, let me get like some plastic surgery done, and I'll go on I'll go on video with you one of these days. Or even better, I think is going to be the live remote that we're going to do when we go squatch hunting.
well, I have a good phone now, and I'm going to be doing the live stuff, and here hopefully this week. I'm not so sure. This week's looking like doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, and all that kind of stuff that I can't control. But it doesn't give me the time. Like, I want to go out to where the Bigfoot ran across the road by Kerman, and maybe in the spring I want to go over towards where you on your side of the state and go over there. And I want to be like San Simeon, and maybe north of San Simeon, actually on the ocean
Yeah,
side.
I think it's for yeah, for as far as I know about up that way, I think our best bet, if you want to do something like that, is to try and hit some spots around Santa Cruz.
Yeah, well, I mean, closer, because there's creeks and stuff like that. That's what I want to look for. The ones that go into the ocean, the creeks.
Right.
I want to get around some of those areas,
Yeah, I got
and
a couple. Yeah, I got a couple of areas that might be interesting up that way that I've heard. I haven't personally checked them out yet, but I've been around that area a little bit, and my haunt has always been the Sierras. It's always been anywhere from Kings Canyon near you, Fresno, a little north. Let's just say Yosemite north, between Yosemite and Tahoe.
right.
You know, Big Pine, Lone Pine, Bishop, Mammoth, all those areas.
I
I'm
want
pretty
to.
familiar with those. I've spent a lot of time in the mountains up there.
I want to do some of those areas too. I have some theories that I want to check out over there.
Yeah,
That
yeah. In fact,
what's
I went to Mono Lake just so I could see the area because you guys have seen that film that the guy said he got something in the background, but I got to call a no go on that one because, and I'll tell you why, because it was bright daylight and there's it seems like 20 miles before you get any trees around Mono. There's just nothing
right?
there. So
Yeah.
if that creature went over there, he would have to expose himself for a long, long time, no matter how fast it's running. So I find that one is a little hard for me to believe just because of the terrain and seeing it up, firsthand. But who knows? I could be wrong.
Yeah, unless he popped out of a hole under a rock or something like that
Yeah,
over
maybe,
there.
but he certainly wouldn't have come from the trees because he would have been. There's a pretty active place, and
Yeah.
either that or he could maybe he was there all night and like I'm just hypothesizing could have fallen asleep there and woken up when people were there. I don't know.
Well, what's cool about over there on that side is you're in the real high Sierras. Like if you go through Yosemite and go 120, Highway 120 when it opens,
Yep.
you're way, way up in the high country. I mean, like it's a road that goes through the wilderness. And well, I have some friends that do backpacking and stuff like that, and they find like kid, Bigfoot tracks with little ones, like family units and stuff like that. In fact, Dr. Meldrum and this other guy, they say the tracks run like they've found the same tracks over hundreds of miles. That they've casted, which is really interesting. And that's one of the reasons why I want to go. Like I have like they just pick out a marshy, muddy area to see if there's tracks. I have some ideas. I have some ideas. I'm not going to say them on the air because somebody will steal them. They'll be
Hmm.
over there and then tell me, "Oh yeah, that worked," and I don't want to hear that. But I have a lot of I think about it a lot, especially after the place that where we went the first time, and
Hmm.
the things that happened to me at that place. I've learned a lot about Bigfoot from there. In fact, like if you want to show up one day and we go over there for a day and spend the day, that's a really good place to have a Bigfoot sighting. I'm not kidding.
I think you and I, just to be jerks, I think we should go there on Memorial Day and just take the spot over.
Well, I want to go to a different spot. They go like okay, like they go to this one spot because I don't know really why. They had something happen there, right? Well, it's almost like they think Bigfoot can't go 5 miles,
Right.
but only really like about 4 miles away, and maybe that's driving. If by the crow flies, it's maybe 2 miles. You know what I mean? We're not talking like a long distance here.
Sure.
There's a real nice place to camp, real nice, and probably when I go over there, I get way more feelings and uh, creeper feelings than I do at the other spot, and
You know,
it's
I'm
more
all about creepy,
beautiful over
so let's
there.
go over there.
Huh?
I said I'm all about creepy feelings, so let's just go over there. I don't care if we go for the day. I just want to get out.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. Well, we probably should cut it. It's almost 10:30 here, and that means it's like really late on the other coast.
Yeah, thanks for all you guys hanging in the central part of the country and the East Coast.
You know, I hardly paid attention to chat. I feel bad, but I was more into what listening to you and stuff. And
I
yeah.
think I got a suggestion here. I got one complaint. I'm going to give you a suggestion. I think we need to pick a day and time,
Oh, to do the show all the time.
if possible.
Yeah, I
Only
would.
because there's
Only
been times when all of a sudden I look at my email and oh shit, Squatch Zone's on live and I've missed three-quarters of it.
right. Yeah. Oh, I
If
know.
you
I
can,
get
I know
it.
you're busy right now, but just think about it.
Well, I want it to be like Wednesday. That's the day I want it to be,
Hmm.
and then just do other days just because. You know what I mean? Like uh, Wednesday would be my day, and then if I can do a Monday, I do a Monday. If I could do a Saturday or a Friday, you know what I mean? But Wednesday is actually the day I want to do it. Only I haven't been able to regularly. But you
Yeah,
will.
if
You
I
guys
think
will.
you tell everybody, hey man, we're gonna try our best to do something Wednesday at 8.
Mm-hmm.
At least you give someone, it breaks up the week, gives someone to look forward to. They've had dinner, they've listened to their boss all day. Now they
Right.
can unwind with a little Squatch chat.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And then also I broke up the actual channel into zones. So if I'm talking UFOs, it goes in the UFO zone, and the one the ghost zone, the Squatch zone, so I broke it up God zone. But only this one was like the chat zone. I think I'll even have one of those. But basically, I'm doing it like that, and then Wednesday's my day. So and I think I said that to everybody before. It's just only this. It's been hard. Like sometimes the way we're remodeling my room, and I have to take everything apart to work in here, and then my other room where I want to set it up permanently is where we're sleeping. So then I didn't finish, so then I got to set everything back up again. And I have to pack it so I don't break it and everything in here. So it's like
Right.
put everything all together, and then pack everything all back up again, just so I don't break things and get it all dirty and dusty and stuff. So I mean, it's kind of hard at the moment. But Wednesday, and then I just realized I could use my phone. So even if I can't set up all my stuff, I could still use my phone and go on Wednesday. So really, Wednesday might be my day for good after this. And I'm glad
Yeah,
you brought that
just
up.
even if it's just an look, it can vary. I mean, that makes it fun. It doesn't always have to be the
Right? Yeah,
yeah,
I
higher end
agree.
production. We could just do, looking at you just flash pictures up there, or just put your logo up there, and just do talking and chat boxing. I mean, the people in chat are all awesome. I mean, you
Yeah,
have
they are.
got a show just dealing with you, just talking with all the people in chat. I mean, that's what's awesome about this. Your spot. All the people in chat, you get no knuckleheads. They're all like very nice, interesting, caring people.
Man, that is for sure. And I love I love you. I love everybody, man. I love everyone, and yeah, I feel totally blessed to be doing this, the thing that you like doing. That's blessed with good friends. And I don't think of everybody as like followers or subscribers or whatever. They're just my friends, and I feel totally blessed. You
It's
know.
about having fun and being real, not views and like. Sure, that's nice and all. I get it, but
Yeah,
it's substance versus fluff.
that's right. That's right. Well, on that note, I know I got to get going. I promised I would like try to keep it at 2 hours too. Only I promised somebody else that. They were saying not only do I set a like for you like you said set a date or a
Right.
time. My wife said set a timing. Like 2 hours. Don't be nice to the people.
You could blame me for this one.
Well, I've done it every single time. If you go back, I'm pushing 3 hours almost every single time. But I'm
Sorry,
having
Vic.
I'm having so much fun I can't quit. Kind of weird, huh?
Yeah. Sorry, Vicky. It's my fault.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna let you go, and I'm gonna let everybody else go. You guys have a good rest of the week. I will be live here. I think this weekend. I'm gonna try to get out to this area where the guy saw the Bigfoot cross the road in 2 steps, right in the middle of the Central Valley. And I mean, I'm real interested in seeing that. But I'll go live when I get there. Now that I know my phone could do it, I'm doing it, man. But all you guys have a really, really great rest of the week, and we'll see you on the weekend.